The axillary delegation requested a formal meeting with Earth's leaders, clearly expecting a disorganized scramble. They were visibly unsettled when, within 12 hours, a unified response team had been assembled in Geneva. Dr. Elena Rice stood among world leaders, her unexpected role as first contact specialist earning her a place at the table despite the protests of several military advisors. Their technology is approximately 3 centuries beyond our most advanced systems, Dr. Morris whispered, analyzing readings from the passive scanners installed around the conference hall. Their ship's energy signature suggests a fusion process we haven't even theorized yet. The massive doors slid open, revealing the axillary representatives in their full ceremonial armor. Supreme Commander Vexthelin towered over the human delegation, his exoskeleton gleaming with embedded technology that pulsed with subtle light patterns. 4 junior officers flanked him, their postures rigid and evaluating. "We come with generous terms," Vexthelin announced without preamble, his translator converting the clicking speech into flawless English. "The Dominion offers protection and limited technological advancement in exchange for resource access and loyalty. 73% of contacted species accept these terms without negotiation." Elena studied the aliens' body language, noting the subtle movements that their cultural briefing hadn't prepared the delegation for. The axillary weren't just confident, they were dismissive, their stance betraying an assumption that humanity would simply fall in line. "And the remaining 27%?" Elena asked, deliberately using their mathematical terms to establish intellectual parity. The commander's secondary eyes flickered, a micro-expression of surprise. "They choose isolation or face necessary correction." Screens around the room displayed the generous terms transmitted from the alien vessel. Elena quickly recognized the pattern. The document outlined resource extraction rights that would devastate Earth's ecosystems within decades, while the technological offerings were carefully limited to prevent human advancement in key areas, particularly spaceflight and energy production. "We appreciate your delegation's journey to our world," the Secretary General responded diplomatically. "However, these terms require careful consideration. We request 48 hours to provide our response." "You have 24, Vexthelin countered, mandibles clicking in what Elena recognized as amusement. "The Dominion's patience is considerable but finite." After the aliens departed, the room erupted into heated debate. Military leaders argued for immediate defensive preparations. Economists calculated the impact of alien technology on global markets, and religious representatives struggled with the theological implications. Elena slipped away from the chaos, retreating to a makeshift analysis center where she projected the complete axillary transmission. Something about their communication pattern nagged at her. The formal proposal followed mathematical structures she recognized, but embedded within the data stream was a secondary protocol, almost like fine print hidden in plain sight. Working through the night, she decoded the ancient challenge protocol. Every species was entitled to trial by contest rather than immediate submission. It was rarely invoked, presented in a way that most species would overlook, but the right was embedded in the Dominion's oldest laws. As dawn broke over Geneva, Elena made her discovery. She didn't realize that in accessing the hidden protocol, she had already sent a response ping to the axillary systems. Aboard their vessel, alarms were already sounding as the Supreme Commander received unprecedented news. The humans had discovered and invoked the ancient challenges. The emergency session of the United Nations Security Council descended into chaos as Elena tried to explain what had happened. "You did what?" The American representative's face had turned an alarming shade of red. "You committed the entire human race to an alien contest without authorization." The protocol response was automatic, Elena explained, fighting to keep her voice steady. "When I decoded the challenge section, the system interpreted it as acceptance. Their laws are absolute on this. We're committed now." General Wee, who had remained silent throughout most of the meeting, finally spoke. "What exactly are these trials, Dr. Reyes?" Elena projected the translated information onto the main screen. 3 challenges: intellect, endurance, and combat, each designed to test different aspects of a species' capabilities. She paused, letting the implications sink in. If we win, we gain full sovereignty and technological uplift rights. If we lose, they own us, the Chinese representative finished grimly. We need to assemble a team immediately, Elena continued. The first trial begins in 3 days, and we need specialists who can represent humanity's best qualities. As the council argued over candidate selection, Elena's secure tablet chimed with an incoming transmission. The Axillary had sent their formal acknowledgement of Earth's champion, her. According to their ancient protocols, whoever invoked the challenge would represent their species. Elena felt the blood drain from her face as she realized the full implications. She wasn't just responsible for discovering the challenges. She would have to lead humanity through them. Outside the UN building, crowds had gathered as news of the alien ultimatum spread. Military forces worldwide were on high alert. Scientists worked frantically to understand axillary technology, and religious leaders offered prayers for humanity's salvation. In the Axillary Mothership, Supreme Commander Vex Thelon reviewed historical data on previous challenges. Only 17 species have invoked the trials in our recorded history, he informed the council. None have passed all 3. Then why do we maintain this ancient tradition? Asked a junior officer, immediately regretting his boldness. Because, Vex Thelon explained patiently, it provides the illusion of fairness while ensuring our continued dominance. The challenges are designed to be failed. They test for qualities that most rational species never develop. Science Director Mexlor looked troubled. The human brain structure suggests unusual cognitive patterns. Their neural plasticity exceeds anything we've encountered in comparable technological civilizations. You worry unnecessarily, War Marshal Kraz dismissed. I've personally defeated 7 species in the endurance trial. Humans are physically inferior to even the weakest of those. Back on Earth, Elena had assembled her core team. Dr. Aidan Morris, whose quantum physics theories had revolutionized computational approaches, Commander Jackson Wei, whose military record included survival in the most extreme conditions Earth could offer, and Fiona Okafor, whose strategic brilliance was matched only by her physical capabilities as a former Olympic pentathlete. I didn't ask for this responsibility, Elena told them in their first meeting. But I'm asking you to stand with me. The Axillary expect us to fail, Wei noted, studying the limited data they had on previous challenges. That gives us one advantage. They'll underestimate us. Then we use that, Fiona said firmly. Humans have always performed best when facing impossible odds. As they prepared for the first trial, Elena received a final transmission from the Axillary vessel. Challenge preparations complete. The intellect trial commences at dawn. Humanity's registered champion and 1 technical advisor may attend. The world held its breath as humanity faced its greatest test. Dr. Morris stared at the equations reformulating themselves across the holographic display. Each time he thought he'd grasped their pattern, they shifted into new configurations that contradicted his previous understanding. Sweat beaded on his forehead, despite the chamber's perfect temperature control. 4 hours remaining, announced Sindar, the axillary mathematician circling the human with predatory satisfaction. Perhaps you would like to concede now. Many find that less humiliating than complete failure. Morris ignored the taunt, focusing instead on Elena's suggestions through their limited communication link. The patterns remind me of something, he muttered. Not just weather systems, but something more fundamental. Think about what makes Earth unique, Elena urged, frantically pulling up geological and biological datasets from the reference materials they'd been permitted to bring. Our planet has something theirs might not, interconnected chaotic systems that still maintain equilibrium. A thought struck Morris. Gaia theory, he whispered. What if these equations are modeling a system where seemingly random components create balanced stability through feedback loops? He began reconstructing the problem using Earth's specific environmental paradigms. Ocean currents affecting atmospheric patterns, which influenced geological processes, which in turn shaped biological evolution. The axillary equations suddenly made sense not as abstract mathematics, but as a model of complex planetary dynamics. They've never experienced a world like ours, Elena realized, watching Morris work. Their homeworld has minimal seasonal variation and geological stability. They wouldn't think in terms of dynamic equilibrium. Morris's fingers flew across the interface, incorporating principles from Earth's unique evolutionary history. Where the axillary mathematics sought perfect alignment, he introduced controlled chaos theory, showing how apparent randomness could generate stable, emergent properties when viewed at larger scales. Submission complete, the system announced as Morris input his final calculations. Zindar approached with mandibles clicking in what humans now recognize as contempt. "Your species' arrogance is," he began, then stopped abruptly as the verification systems processed Morris's solution. The chamber filled with flashing lights as confirmation protocols activated. "Impossible," the axillary mathematician whispered, his translator struggling to convey his shock. "These equations have remained unsolved for 17 generations." The verification process completed with a resonant tone that seemed to physically affect the axillary present. Several junior scientists backed away from Morris as though he had suddenly become dangerous. "The human solution is correct," Zindar finally admitted, his voice hollow. "The intellect trial is concluded. Humanity advances to the second challenge." As they were escorted back to their quarters, Elena noticed the changed demeanor of their axillary guards. Where before there had been dismissive confidence, now she sensed caution and confusion. "They're recalculating our threat assessment," she whispered to Morris. "Good. Let them worry." In the Dominion Command Center, the Axillary Council reviewed the trial recordings with growing concern. The human approached the problem using entirely novel methodologies. Science Director Mexlor explained. They conceptualized the equations as biological systems rather than pure mathematics. "A lucky convergence," War Marshal Kraz dismissed. "The physical trial will expose their weakness." Supreme Commander Vex Thalon remained silent, studying the human solution with all four eyes focused intently on the display. "Order complete analysis of human environmental and evolutionary history," he finally commanded. "There is something different about this species, something we have overlooked." Back in their quarters, Elena's team celebrated cautiously while preparing for the next challenge. "One down. 2 to go," we noted grimly. "And they'll make sure the next ones are harder." "Let them try," Fiona replied with a confident smile. "We're just getting started." Elena studied the crystalline data chip Talari had provided, her makeshift scanner confirming it contained no harmful programming. The security protocols in their quarters had been designed to detect axillary technology, but this Cell-Levi device operated on entirely different principles. "Should we trust this?" Commander Wei asked, his military training making him naturally suspicious. "It could be another test." "The axillary wouldn't need subterfuge to defeat us," Elena reasoned. "They already hold every advantage." "This is something else." She inserted the chip into their modified tablet. Immediately, the screen filled with detailed schematics of previous challenge modifications, records of how the axillary had altered trial parameters when competitor species came too close to success. "This confirms what I suspected," Dr. Morris said grimly, examining the data. "The challenges have predetermined outcomes. When a species shows unexpected strength in one area, the difficulty is subtly recalibrated." Fiona studied the combat trial records with particular interest. "Look at this. The Norcadian champion was winning until the arena gravity suddenly malfunctioned to favor the axillary fighter." The data contained something else. Communication records revealing the true purpose behind the Dominion's expansion. Resource extraction went far beyond mere energy needs or territorial ambition. The axillary were systematically harvesting specific quantum reactive materials found only on life-bearing worlds. What could they need these materials for? Morris wondered. Something big enough to require stripping thousands of worlds, Wei concluded darkly. A soft chime interrupted their analysis. The silver-skinned Saluvi, Talari, had returned, somehow bypassing the supposedly impenetrable security barriers again. "You've reviewed our data," Talari noted, voice melodic despite coming through a translator. "Now you understand what you face. Why help us?" Elena asked directly. "What do the Saluvi gain?" "We maintain independence through methods the Dominion considers beneath their dignity," Talari explained. "Subterfuge, misdirection, technologies they consider primitive. For millennia, we've watched them consume world after world while remaining hidden in plain sight." The aliens' iridescent eyes shifted color, displaying what seemed to be genuine emotion. "But we are few. We need allies to truly challenge their power. Your species shows potential we haven't seen before." Meanwhile, in his private study chamber, Supreme Commander Vexthalon immersed himself in human historical records. What he found disturbed him deeply. Countless extinction-level events that should have terminated human development. Ice ages, supervolcanoes, plagues, 2 global nuclear standoffs. Yet each time, humans had not merely survived but adapted. "They should have perished at least 7 times, he muttered to his personal analytical system. Their genetic diversity alone should have caused societal fracturing. Yet somehow they've maintained civilization cohesion, despite radical phenotype variations. Most troubling was their response to catastrophe. Where logical species reduced risk through conservative approaches, humans seemed to accelerate development during crisis. Their technological growth curve after near-extinction events showed exponential spikes rather than cautious plateaus. They don't behave according to any known sociological model," he concluded. Perhaps challenging them was premature. His console chimed with a priority alert from Military Director Zach Svorin. The message was encrypted with personal security codes, unusual for official communications. Vexthalon's inner eyelids narrowed as he read the proposal. Contingency plans for eliminating the human team should they progress beyond the second trial. "Unnecessary," he responded, yet something made him hesitate before rejecting the plan outright. For the first time in centuries, the Supreme Commander felt something approaching uncertainty. Back in the human quarters, Elena's team prepared for the next challenge with renewed determination. "They've never played fair," Wei noted, reviewing the combat records. "We shouldn't expect them to start now." "Then we'll need to be unpredictable," Fiona replied. "Fortunately, that's humanity's specialty." The third sunrise on Marnox painted the crimson dunes with golden light. Commander Wei had traveled through the night, using the predator migration patterns Fiona had identified to navigate safely. His water reserves were critically low, but the beacon's signal had strengthened significantly over the past hour. 20 kilometers behind, War Marshal Kraz struggled through the shifting sands. His environmental suit's damaged filtration system forced him to breathe the toxic air in measured gasps. The prideful Axillary refused to acknowledge his growing weakness, even as his internal monitors warned of respiratory distress. The human should have succumbed to the night predators, he wheezed into his recorder. Their survival defies prediction models. Wei crested a particularly steep dune and froze at the sight before him. The beacon stood atop a plateau across a wide basin, but the basin floor writhed with thousands of segmented creatures resembling a nightmarish cross between centipedes and scorpions. The creatures had remained buried during previous crossings, but now they had surfaced, forming an impenetrable barrier. "They've changed the parameters," Elena's voice crackled through his limited communication device. The Saluvi data warned they might do this. Wei studied the terrain, noticing how the creatures responded to vibrations in the sand. "Can you analyze their movement patterns?" he asked. Elena and Fiona worked rapidly with the limited visual data from Wei's helmet cam. "They're territorial," Fiona concluded. "They attack anything that crosses their individual zones, but they also fight each other when territories overlap." A plan formed in Wei's mind. Using rocks collected from the dune, he created a series of timed distractions, tossing them in calculated sequences to trigger territorial conflicts among the creatures. The resulting chaos created temporary pathways through the basin. Wei waited for the perfect moment, then moved. His route appeared random to observers, but followed a precise pattern of timed crossings through the fighting creatures. Halfway across, he encountered Kraz, who had finally caught up, and now stood at the basin's edge, calculating his own approach. "Your strategy is unexpected," the auxiliary marshal admitted, his translator conveying reluctant admiration. Wei considered leaving his opponent behind, the surest way to guarantee humanity's victory. Instead, he shared his observation about the creature's territorial behavior. "Follow exactly 20 seconds behind me. Step only where I step." "Why assist an adversary?" Kraz demanded, suspicious. "Because the challenge is reaching the beacon, not defeating you," Wei replied simply. Together they navigated the basin, the human leading with improvised tactics, while the auxiliary followed with perfect precision. When they reached the plateau's base, Wei didn't hesitate. He continued climbing while Kraz paused to recover his strength. The beacon's verification system activated as Wei placed his palm against the scanner. A deep tone resonated across the landscape, signaling completion of the second trial. Minutes later, Kraz reached the summit. "You could have delayed to ensure my failure," the auxiliary noted, his breathing labored. "That's not how we measure success," Wei responded. In the observation chamber, Alina watched Supreme Commander Vex Thalen's reaction to humanity's second victory. The auxiliary leader's mandibles twitched in what she was learning to recognize as profound disturbance. "Unprecedented," he murmured to his advisors. "They cooperate even at personal cost." Military Director Zaxforin's voice cut through the chamber. "This cannot continue. The final trial must proceed under adjusted protocols." As Wei was transported back to the mothership, celebrations erupted across Earth. 2 trials completed, 1 remaining. For the first time since the auxiliary arrival, humanity dared to hope. Elena awoke to the sharp scent of chemical compounds reacting in the ventilation system. Her eyes burned as she scrambled from her bed, instantly recognizing the danger. "Gas," she shouted, activating the emergency protocols Teleri had helped implement. The makeshift air filters they had constructed from Earth-based designs hummed to life, buying them precious minutes. Dr. Morris was closest to the ventilation input and took the heaviest exposure. He collapsed, coughing violently as the chemicals attacked his respiratory system. Wei lifted the scientist onto his shoulders while Fiona secured their critical data. "The emergency exit Teleri showed us," Elena directed, leading them toward a maintenance shaft hidden behind a panel in their quarters. The shaft, designed for automated repair drones, barely accommodated human dimensions. They crawled through in single file, Morris drifting in and out of consciousness as Wei dragged him through the narrow passage. "The auxiliary wouldn't attempt something this crude," Fiona noted as they emerged in an unused storage compartment. "This is factional. Someone acting without full authorization." Supreme Commander Vex Thalan received the report of the environmental system malfunction with obvious skepticism. His inner eyelids narrowed as Military Director Zaxforin explained the regrettable incident. "Strange that such a malfunction would affect only the human quarters," Vex Thalan observed, "and coincide precisely with their rest cycle. Equipment designed for auxiliary environments often shows compatibility issues with other species," Zaxforin replied smoothly. "I've ordered a complete investigation." "See that you do," the Supreme Commander responded, his tone making it clear he understood exactly what had happened. "The ancient laws governing the challenges are absolute. Interference brings consequences even I cannot prevent." In a secure medical chamber, Dr. Morris recovered under the care of the ship's physicians. The chemical exposure had damaged his lungs, but auxiliary medical technology, provided at Vex Thalan's direct order, ensured he would heal completely before the final trial. "They're divided," Alina explained to her team as they gathered around Morris's bed. "The traditionalists versus the pragmatists. Vex Thalan seems committed to the rules of the challenge, but Zaxforin represents those unwilling to risk human victory." Makes our job simpler, we noted grimly. We know who to watch. Talari visited under the guise of a medical technician, bringing updated information about the final trial. The combat parameters have been modified 3 times in the past cycle. The Saluvi whispered. They're programming specifically against human reflexes and fighting styles. Meanwhile, on Earth, the combined efforts of human intelligence agencies and Saluvi technology had yielded alarming discoveries. Satellite imagery, enhanced by alien algorithms, revealed energy signatures around the planet that matched axillary mining survey patterns. They've already mapped our entire mineral profile, the UN Secretary-General announced to world leaders. If humanity fails the final challenge, they're prepared to begin immediate resource extraction. Global military forces mobilized discreetly, positioning for a resistance that most knew would be futile against the axillary's superior technology. Yet the human spirit of defiance prevailed. If they couldn't win through the challenges, they would ensure the axillary victory came at an unprecedented cost. Back on the mothership, Fiona Okafor prepared for the combat trial by studying every available recording of General Drakmore's previous victories. Where others saw an unbeatable opponent, she identified patterns and weaknesses. He's never faced someone who changes tactics mid-fight, she noted. The axillary fighting style relies on overwhelming force applied through predetermined sequences. Then you'll do what humans have always done, Elena told her. Adapt faster than they can predict. The combat arena's transparent sphere hung against the backdrop of Earth, deliberately positioned to remind humanity what they stood to lose. Inside, Fiona circled cautiously, her movements fluid and unpredictable as she evaded another of Drakmore's powerful strikes. Your species lacks the skeletal density for true combat, the axillary general taunted, his armor gleaming as gravity shifted again, sending Fiona tumbling momentarily before she regained her footing. Surrender would preserve your dignity. Instead of responding, Fiona continued her seemingly random movements, each one subtly different from the last. Unlike the previous challengers who had attempted to match the axillary's strength, she focused on continuous motion, never establishing a pattern the general could anticipate. In the control chamber, Military Director Zach Svorin watched with growing frustration. The human female should have fallen within the first sequence, he hissed to his technicians. Increase gravitational fluctuation by 20%. Sir, that exceeds safety protocols, a junior officer objected. Override them, Zach Svorin commanded. This ends now. The sudden gravity spike sent Fiona crashing against the arena wall, knocking the breath from her lungs. Drakmore pressed his advantage, closing in for the decisive blow. The millions watching worldwide tensed collectively as the axillary champion raised his weapon. In the observation deck, Elena noticed the power surge to the arena controls. They're cheating, she whispered to Talari, who immediately interfaced with a hidden device. The Saluvi learned to counter axillary override centuries ago. The alien replied, fingers dancing across the crystalline surface. We cannot fully neutralize it, but we can create interference. The gravity field fluctuated wildly, affecting both combatants equally. Drakmore, surprised by the unexpected change, hesitated momentarily, exactly as Fiona had anticipated. She had been studying the arena's energy signatures throughout the fight, recognizing the pattern of axillary technology. The moment the field destabilized, she was ready. Using the wall as a springboard, she launched herself in a spinning maneuver that utilized the gravitational flux rather than fighting against it. The technique, developed in Earth's zero-G training programs, carried her past the axillary's defenses. Her precisely aimed strike connected with a joint in Drakmore's exoskeleton, one of the few vulnerabilities she had identified in her analysis. The massive alien general staggered, his balance systems temporarily disabled. Fiona continued her momentum, executing a sequence of strikes that targeted neural clusters rather than attempting to penetrate the thick armor. Each hit was calculated to disrupt rather than damage. Impossible, Zaxvorin breathed as Drakmor's movements became increasingly uncoordinated. She's using our own technological architecture against us. Supreme Commander Vexthelon watched in fascination. She identified his control systems purely through observation. No species has ever. He didn't finish the sentence. With a final precision strike to what human martial artists would recognize as a pressure point, Fiona sent the axillary champion crashing unconscious to the arena floor. Silence enveloped the chamber, spreading through the observation decks and transmission feeds across thousands of worlds. Then, slowly, a tone sounded, the ancient signal of a completed challenge. The final trial is concluded, the automated system announced. The challenger species has prevailed. The implications rippled through the Dominion fleet. For the first time in recorded history, a species had won all 3 trials. The ancient laws were clear and inviolable, even for the Supreme Commander himself. As Fiona stood victorious in the arena, her gaze turned toward the observation window where Alina and the team watched. Her simple nod conveyed everything words could not. Humanity had done the impossible. The grand ceremonial chamber of the Axillary Mothership had never hosted a victory ceremony for the challenges. The protocol had existed in their archives for millennia, untested and theoretical until now. Supreme Commander Vexthelon stood at the center of the raised platform, his ceremonial armor gleaming with embedded technologies that pulsed in rhythm with his speech. The ancient laws of the Dominion are absolute, he intoned, his words translated and broadcast to every corner of controlled space. Humanity has proven worthy through trial of intellect, endurance, and combat. As ordained by our founders, they shall receive sovereignty and advancement. Alina stepped forward, flanked by her team. Dr. Morris had recovered enough to stand unaided, though his breathing remained labored. Commander Wei and Fiona Okafor stood tall, their posture reflecting the pride of their accomplishments. Behind them, representatives from Earth's nations watched in solemn unity. Humanity acknowledges the Dominion's adherence to its ancient laws, Alina responded, carefully following the protocol Talari had provided. However, we propose an alternative to the traditional exchange. Murmurs rippled through the assembled axillary officials. No species had ever deviated from the ritual. Military Director Zaxvorin's mandibles clicked in agitation, but Supreme Commander Vexthelon raised a hand for silence, his curiosity evident. We decline the offered technological gifts, Alina continued, her voice steady despite the audacity of her statement. Instead, we propose the establishment of an open exchange network, one where all species may trade knowledge, culture, and resources as equals rather than as subordinates. The chamber erupted in clicks and whistles that the translators couldn't process. The concept was so foreign to Dominion philosophy that many axillary couldn't comprehend it. Vexthelon's inner eyelids narrowed as he studied Alina's expression. "You would reject advancement?" he asked, genuine confusion in his multifaceted eyes. "We would reject dependency," Alina clarified. History shows that true advancement comes through diversity of approach and independence of thought. Earth will develop at its own pace, integrating only those technologies we fully understand. From hidden observation posts throughout Dominion space, representatives of subjugated worlds watched the broadcast with growing excitement. The Saluvi delegation had emerged publicly for the first time in centuries, standing openly alongside 3 other independent species who had maintained secret resistance against axillary rule. "The humans speak wisdom," the Saluvi ambassador announced on an open channel. "Our alliance supports their proposal." Vexthelon recognized the significance immediately. The carefully maintained illusion of axillary omnipotence, the foundation of their control, was crumbling in real time. Without firing a shot, humanity had instigated a philosophical revolution that threatened the Dominion's entire power structure. "Your species continues to confound prediction," the Supreme Commander admitted privately to Alina after the formal ceremony. "Our models suggested 12 different responses to victory. Rejection of advancement appeared in none of them." "Perhaps that's the fundamental difference," Alina replied. "You see technological progress as linear advancement. We see it as just one component of a complex adaptive system. True advancement comes from integration, not accumulation. As the human delegation departed, Vexthalon watched Earth growing larger in the viewing port. For the first time in his long existence, the Supreme Commander faced a future he couldn't predict, and found himself intrigued rather than concerned. The Axillary had challenged humanity, expecting submission or destruction. Instead, they had inadvertently awakened a galactic revolution, their biggest regret, and perhaps their most important lesson.